Ladies and gentlemen, there will come a time when your faith is stretched beyond its limits. You will face challenges that seem insurmountable. You will pray and not hear an answer. You will seek and not immediately find. And in those moments, the question is not whether you believe in God, but whether you trust Him even when you don't understand His ways. Trials are divine opportunities. When God allows tests in your life, it is never to destroy you. It is to develop you. Look at history. Every great leader, every man and woman of faith went through seasons of testing before they could walk in their destiny. Abraham was tested when asked to sacrifice Isaac. Joseph was tested in the prison before reaching the palace. Job was tested beyond human endurance, yet he remained faithful. Your trial is a classroom, and your faith is being refined. God is not punishing you. He is positioning you for greater things. Faith must be proven. Faith is not proven in comfort, it is proven in crisis. Anyone can say, I trust God when everything is going well. But the real test of faith is when everything seems to fall apart, when the business fails, when the doctor gives a bad report, when friends walk away. At that moment, you have a choice to allow the situation to shake you or to allow it to strengthen you. A faith that is never tested is a faith that cannot be trusted. Gold is purified by fire, and so is faith. God's delays are not denials. Many times, the test of faith is not about suffering, but about waiting. God gives promises, but He does not always fulfill them immediately. Why? Because the process of waiting builds patience, character, and endurance. When you feel like heaven is silent, remember, God is working in the unseen. The delay is not to harm you, but to prepare you. If God has spoken it, He will fulfill it. Your job is to remain faithful in the waiting season. Stay anchored in purpose. One of the biggest mistakes people make during trials is losing focus. When life gets tough, they abandon their assignment. They stop praying, they stop serving, they stop believing. But let me tell you, your greatest breakthrough often comes in the middle of your greatest tests. The key to passing God's test is to remain faithful even when you don't see results. Stay committed to your purpose. Keep walking in obedience. Do not let temporary trials make you forget eternal promises. My friends, God is not testing your faith to break you. He is testing it to bless you. The trials you face today are preparing you for the victories of tomorrow. Stand firm, trust in His plan, walk by faith, not by sight. Because when you remain faithful under testing, you will emerge stronger, wiser, and ready for the next level of your destiny. Stay strong, stay faithful, stay anchored. Because in the end, God always rewards those who endure. When difficulties arise in life, it is easy to feel discouraged, frustrated, and even abandoned. Many people question why they must go through hardship, pain, and suffering. However, what if I told you that every test, every trial, and every challenge you face is actually an opportunity in disguise? The truth is, when God allows a test in your life, it is not meant to break you, but to build you. Trials are not roadblocks. They are stepping stones toward the fulfillment of your purpose. Throughout history, every great person of faith has endured seasons of testing before they could walk in their divine assignment. These tests are part of God's process to refine, strengthen, and equip you for the greater things He has in store. Look at the life of Abraham. God gave him a promise that he would be the father of many nations. Yet years passed, and he and his wife Sarah remained childless. Just when they finally received their long-awaited son Isaac, God tested Abraham by asking him to sacrifice the very promise he had given. Imagine the internal struggle Abraham must have faced. However, he did not resist or question God's command. Instead, he obeyed, believing that God had a greater plan beyond his understanding. At the moment he lifted the knife, God provided a ram as a substitute. Abraham's faith was not just spoken, it was proven through his obedience in the test. In the same way, trials in your life are not there to destroy you, they are there to develop you. Many people want to reach new levels of success, influence, and purpose, but they do not want to go through the process that prepares them for it. If you want God to elevate you, He must first prepare you. Preparation often comes through seasons of struggle, uncertainty, and waiting. These seasons teach us patience, perseverance, and trust. The very things that feel like obstacles are often God's way of shaping you into the person you need to become. Joseph's story is another powerful example of how trials are divine opportunities. As a young man, he received a dream from God that he would one day be a great leader. However, before that dream could come to pass, Joseph had to endure years of betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. If Joseph had focused only on his suffering, he might have given up. But he remained faithful, even in hardship. He trusted that God was still in control, even when it seemed like everything was working against him. In the end, what seemed like a series of unfortunate events was actually God's way of positioning Joseph to fulfill his destiny. The very trials that looked like setbacks were actually divine setups for his purpose. God often allows tests to expose what is inside of us. When everything is going well, it is easy to say we have faith, but real faith is revealed in difficult moments. A test will show whether you trust in God's timing or your own. It will show whether your faith is rooted in God's promises or in your personal comfort. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, God tested them repeatedly to see if they would trust Him for provision, guidance, and protection. Unfortunately, many of them failed the test because they focused on their temporary discomfort rather than on God's faithfulness. The ones who endured, however, entered the promised land. Another important truth about trials is that they prepare us for responsibility. If God has called you to do something great, He must first ensure that you are capable of handling it. Trials teach you discipline, endurance, and wisdom, qualities you will need when you step into your calling. A soldier is not sent into battle without training. Likewise, God will not place you in a position of influence without first equipping you through trials. The key is to change your perspective. Instead of seeing trials as punishment, start seeing them as preparation. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is God trying to teach me?" Every difficulty carries a lesson. Every struggle carries an opportunity for growth. The moment you shift your mindset, you will begin to see God's hand even in the toughest situations. So, if you are facing trials today, do not be discouraged. It is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It is a sign that He is preparing you. The pressure you feel is not there to crush you. It is there to refine you. Just as gold is purified by fire, your faith is being strengthened through testing. And when you come out of this season, you will not be the same. You will be stronger, wiser, and ready for the next level of your destiny. Faith is one of the most powerful forces in existence. But it is not merely an idea or a feeling. It must be tested to be proven genuine. It is easy to declare faith in God when everything is going well. when prayers are answered quickly and when life is comfortable. But true faith is not revealed in comfort, it is revealed in crisis. Many people claim to trust God, but the real question is, can you trust Him when nothing makes sense? Can you hold on when you don't see results? Faith is not just believing when things are easy, it is standing firm when everything around you suggests otherwise. Every great person of faith in history had to endure testing to prove the strength of their trust in God. Look at Noah. God told him to build an ark when there was no sign of rain. Imagine how foolish he must have looked to the people around him. For years he labored, building something based on a divine instruction rather than visible evidence. His faith was tested in the waiting, in the ridicule, and in the uncertainty. But because he remained steadfast, he and his family were saved while the rest of the world perished. His faith was not just spoken, it was proven through obedience. And testing comes in different forms, and often it appears in the areas we hold most dear. Abraham was tested when God asked him to sacrifice his only son Isaac. It was a test not just of obedience, but of trust. Would Abraham still believe in God's promise even when it seemed to contradict God's command? Would he still have faith when his heart was breaking? Abraham's willingness to go through with the sacrifice proved that his faith was not in the blessing, but in the one who gives the blessing. That is the difference between shallow faith and tested faith. Shallow faith crumbles under pressure, but tested faith remains firm no matter the circumstances. One of the greatest examples of faith being tested is found in the life of Job. Job was a righteous man who honored God, yet he lost everything: his wealth, his health, and even his children. His friends accused him, his wife told him to curse God, and yet Job refused to turn away from his faith. He did not understand why he was suffering, but he still believed that God was just and faithful. In the end, because Job remained steadfast, God restored everything he had lost, even greater than before. His story teaches us that faith is not just about trusting God when things are good. It is about holding on to God even when everything falls apart. Faith must also be tested through waiting. Many times when people pray, they expect immediate answers. But God often delays His response, not to discourage us, but to strengthen our faith. Look at Joseph. He received a vision that he would become a great leader. But before that dream became reality, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison for a crime he did not commit. For years, it seemed like his life was going in the opposite direction of his destiny. Yet, through all the hardship, Joseph remained faithful. He continued to trust God even when he did not understand. His years of testing prepared him for the moment when he would rise to power and save an entire nation. If Joseph had given up in the middle of his trial, he would have missed the fulfillment of his purpose. Testing also reveals what is truly inside of us. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, God tested them repeatedly to see whether they would trust Him. Despite witnessing miracles, they often wavered in faith whenever they faced difficulties. They complained, doubted, and even wished to return to slavery rather than endure the process of the journey to the Promised Land. Their failure to remain steadfast caused an entire generation to miss their inheritance. It is a sobering reminder that tests are not just about enduring hardship. They are about proving our readiness to receive the promises of God. A common mistake people make during testing is assuming that difficulties mean God has abandoned them. This is not true. The teacher is always silent during the test. God does not test you to destroy you. He tests you to reveal the strength of your faith. Just as a builder tests the strength of a structure before allowing it to carry weight, God tests your faith before entrusting you with greater responsibility. If you desire to grow spiritually, you must be willing to endure the testing that comes with it. Many people want elevation, but they do not want examination. They want the reward without the refining process. But the truth is, God will not promote you until you pass the test. If you are facing trials today, remember that they are not designed to break you, but to build you. Faith must be tested to be proven real. And when you stand firm through testing, you will emerge stronger, wiser, and ready for the destiny God has prepared for you. One of the most challenging aspects of faith is waiting. Waiting tests patience, endurance, and trust in God's timing. Many people assume that when a prayer is not answered immediately, God has said no. However, a delay does not mean denial. God operates on a divine timetable that is often different from our own. What looks like a delay to us is actually divine preparation. When God makes us wait, He is not ignoring us. He is working behind the scenes in ways we cannot see. Throughout Scripture, we see countless examples of individuals who had to endure a season of waiting before receiving the fulfillment of God's promises. One of the most well-known examples is Abraham. God promised him that he would be the father of many nations, yet he and his wife Sarah remained childless for decades. At times, their faith wavered. They tried to take matters into their own hands by having a child through Hagar. But that was not God's plan. The delay was intentional because God was not just giving them a son, He was building their character, strengthening their faith, and ensuring that His promise would be fulfilled in the right way and at the right time. Eventually, Isaac was born, not according to human effort, but through divine intervention. Another powerful example is Joseph. As a young man, Joseph had a dream that he would one day be a great leader. But before he could walk in that destiny, he endured years of suffering. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. From a human perspective, it seemed like everything was working against him. But God was not denying Joseph's dream. He was preparing him for it. The trials Joseph endured were necessary for his development. When the right time came, Joseph was promoted from the prison to the palace, becoming second in command over all of Egypt. If Joseph had not gone through the process, he would not have been ready for the position God had planned for him. Delays often come because God is working on something greater than we can imagine. Sometimes the delay is about preparing us, and other times it is about aligning circumstances around us. When the Israelites were delivered from Egypt, they expected to enter the promised land quickly. However, what should have been a short journey turned into 40 years in the wilderness. Why? Because they were not spiritually ready to enter the land. Their delay was not due to God withholding His promise. It was due to their own lack of faith and obedience. They needed to be transformed before they could receive what God had for them. This shows us that waiting is not just about time. Another important reason God delays certain things is to build trust in Him rather than in our own abilities. Consider David. He was anointed as king while he was still a shepherd boy, but he did not immediately take the throne. Instead, he spent years running for his life from King Saul. During this time, David had multiple opportunities to take matters into his own hands and kill Saul, but he refused. He understood that if God had promised him the throne, then God would also bring it to pass in his timing. David's patience and faithfulness during the waiting season prepared him to be the king that Israel needed. In our own lives, we often become frustrated when things don't happen according to our schedule. We pray for breakthroughs, opportunities, and blessings. And when they don't come immediately, we start to doubt. But God is never late. His timing is always perfect. What seems like a delay to us is actually part of his divine plan. Sometimes the answer is delayed because we are not ready for it. Other times, it is because God is preparing something even greater than we asked for. A delay is also a test of whether we will remain faithful while we wait. Many people lose faith in the waiting season. They stop praying, stop believing, and sometimes even walk away from God. But the truth is, waiting is part of the process of faith. Just as a seed needs time to grow before it becomes a tree, our faith needs time to develop before we can handle the blessings God has for us. If you plant a seed and dig it up every day to check its progress, it will never grow. Likewise, if we constantly doubt and try to force things in our own strength, we will delay what God wants to do in our lives. It is important to trust that God's delays are not rejections, they are redirections. When one door doesn't open, it may be because God has a better one prepared. When one opportunity doesn't come to pass, it may be because God is leading you towards something greater. Instead of becoming discouraged in the waiting season, we must use it as a time to grow, to develop, and to trust in God's plan. The key to enduring divine delays is faith and patience. Hebrews 6:12 says, "Through faith and patience we inherit the promises." Faith believes that God will fulfill his word, and patience allows us to wait for it to happen in his perfect timing. If we rush ahead of God, we may end up with something less than his best. But if we wait on him, we will receive exactly what he has planned, something far greater than we could have imagined. So whenever you feel like God is delaying an answer, remember this: he is not saying no, he is saying not yet. Trust his timing, stay faithful, and believe that what he has promised will come to pass at the perfect moment. One of the most essential qualities required to fulfill your purpose in life is endurance. Many people desire success, breakthroughs, and blessings, but few are willing to endure the process that leads to them. Endurance is the ability to remain steadfast and faithful despite hardship, opposition, or delay. It is what separates those who give up from those who overcome. In life, challenges will come, difficulties will arise, and tests will be unavoidable. But those who endure will always be the ones who experience true elevation. Endurance is necessary because growth comes through resistance. Just as a muscle grows stronger when it is stretched and challenged, so does faith. If there were no challenges in life, there would be no opportunities to develop strength, patience, and resilience. When a tree faces strong winds, its roots grow deeper into the ground, making it stronger. Likewise, the challenges you face are not designed to break you, but to strengthen you for the next level. Throughout history, every great person used by God had to endure a season of testing before stepping into their destiny. Joseph endured betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment before he was elevated to a position of power. David endured years of running from Saul before he was crowned king. Even Jesus himself endured suffering, rejection, and the cross before he was exalted. This pattern teaches us that before elevation comes endurance. If you are facing trials today, understand that they are not signs of defeat, but signs of preparation. Endurance is not just about surviving hardships. It is about maintaining the right attitude in the process. Many people go through difficulties, but allow bitterness, frustration, and doubt to take over their hearts. True endurance means trusting God even when you do not understand His plan. It means continuing to worship, pray, and serve even when life is tough. The Israelites were tested in the wilderness, but instead of enduring with faith, they complained, doubted, and turned away from God. As a result, they delayed their own elevation. Instead of entering the promised land quickly, they wandered for 40 years. This shows us that endurance is not just about waiting. It is about waiting with the right spirit. One of the greatest examples of endurance leading to elevation is found in Job. Job was a righteous man who lost everything: his wealth, his children, and even his health. Yet, despite his suffering, he refused to curse God. He endured, holding on to his faith even when he had no answers. Because of his endurance, God restored everything Job had lost and gave him double for his trouble. Job's story reminds us that if we endure with faith, God will always bring restoration. Another reason endurance is important is that your response to trials determines your readiness for promotion. God does not elevate people who are unprepared. He allows tests to refine character, strengthen faith, and remove weaknesses. If Joseph had not endured with patience and integrity, he would not have been ready to govern Egypt. If David had not endured Saul's attacks with humility, he would not have been the king Israel needed. Many people want elevation, but they do not want the endurance that prepares them for it. The truth is, the higher the calling, the greater the tests. If God has a great plan for your life, He will take you through a process of endurance to ensure that when you reach that level, you will be able to sustain it. Endurance also teaches the principle of faithfulness in small things. Before God entrusts you with great responsibility, He will first test you in smaller areas. David was anointed to be king, but before that he was a shepherd. He endured years of tending sheep, facing lions and bears, and learning to lead in the wilderness. That season of endurance prepared him to lead a nation. Many people want big opportunities, but they neglect the process of preparation. They want to lead, but they're not willing to serve. They want success, but they are not willing to be tested. God does not elevate those who are unprepared. He elevates those who endure the process of preparation. One of the most dangerous things is receiving elevation before developing endurance. Many people rise too quickly, and because they lack endurance, they fall just as fast. A building without a strong foundation will collapse under pressure. Likewise, a person who has not developed endurance will not be able to handle the challenges that come with elevation. God's process is designed to build endurance so that when He elevates you, you will not just rise, you will remain strong. Endurance is also a testimony to others. When people see you standing firm in the face of trials, it encourages them to keep going. Your endurance can inspire someone else to trust God, remain faithful, and keep moving forward. Paul the Apostle endured shipwrecks, imprisonment, beatings, and countless hardships, yet he never gave up. His endurance not only led to his own spiritual elevation, but also strengthened the faith of generations after him. So, if you are facing trials, remember this: endurance is the key to elevation. You are not suffering for no reason. God is preparing you. The difficulties you face are shaping you for your destiny. Do not quit, do not give up, and do not lose heart. The trials are temporary, but the reward of endurance is eternal. Keep pressing forward, and in due time, you will experience the elevation that God has prepared for you.